Okay, so last time we spoke about like farmers and insurance and subsidies and things like that. Can you kind of just give an overview on how farmers are doing with the drought and how the insurance works with the government subsidies and things like that?
Okay, first of all, in terms of the drought, this has been a much better year than it was last year. It's still not great, so the farmers are probably faring a little better in terms of their overall production. Irrigated production has been decent. Dryland production has been spotty. Where they had rain, it was decent. Where they didn't, it wasn't. So the difference between this year and last year, though, is that the insurance price is much lower, and the market price is much lower. So even those that lost the crop, it was less valuable in terms of insurance, and those that made the crop, it was less valuable in terms of what they produced. So revenue-wise, they're probably a little lower than they were last year, even though many of them lost their complete crop because their revenue was up because of insurance. So the insurance has probably helped smooth that out a lot. The program basically is like any other kind of insurance, like you buy your car, except that because the risk is so high, the premiums tend to be very high. And what the government does is pay a portion of those premiums. They share the risk with the farmer. So the farmer is buying the insurance. They're typically paying a little over half of the premium. And so it helps protect them from catastrophic weather events like this drought. But the subsidies are there to kind of make it a little more affordable for them and encourage them to buy that, so that you don't need the other government programs, which are the direct subsidies, the direct payments.
Okay, and we also talked about like a little bit of a trickle-down effect where maybe the farmers are going to be okay because of their insurance and their revenue will be fine. However, maybe the people at the cotton mills and things like that, they might not be as good. After doing research, I found there was a strong correlation between rainfall and the Texas unemployment rate as a whole. However, that correlation didn't really translate to subsidies in counties correlated to county unemployment. Do you think you might be able to explain that? Or?
Well, if you look at things on a county level basis, oftentimes things are distorted because of the type of county it is. For example, in Lubbock County, you wouldn't see as high a correlation as you would, say, in Hockley County, because Hockley County is highly agricultural, whereas Lubbock County is obviously not. So the correlation that exists there is a trickle-down effect. So, for example, last year when you had no cotton flowing through the system because of the almost complete failure, a lot of the gins and things didn't hire the additional workers that they needed, the seasonal workers, things like that. This year we've got more cotton flowing through the system, even though it's of lower value to the farmer. There's more of it going. So you would anticipate seeing more seasonal employment occurring at cotton gins and mills and things like that. So, it will have an impact on unemployment in certain areas. But obviously, if you've got one or two gins in a county and, the difference in employment between a bad year and a good year is 10 people, you don't see a huge effect on the unemployment rate. So it's an effect that spreads out pretty quickly, but it is there. I mean, it trickles down. So you would expect to see, if you were to look at that in highly rural counties, the effect is much larger than it is in more urban counties like Lubbock or Randall or Potter up in Amarillo area.
And last question, with the subsidies and things like that, you described how they buy it and the government helps pay for the premium. Texas has received over the last few years just like hundreds of millions. Some counties alone receiving tens of millions. How does that compare to other states? I noticed we were in top 2, 3, 5 states or so. How does that compare to other states who are having similar effects? The Missouris and the...
Well, if you the data that you're looking at represents the height of the drought in Texas. I would expect to see this year, as we wrap up this year, those numbers will be down. Of course, Texas is a big state, so the cumulative number is quite large no matter what. But on a per farmer basis or per county basis, I would expect those numbers to be much lower this year, much higher in places like Iowa, Nebraska, because they had a much more severe drought this year. See, if you look at the data over time, it tends to follow where you have disasters, or it may be a big flood in the Missouri Valley, and you see a big surge in insurance payouts in that area. We tend to have a little bit higher insurance payout ratio than, say, Iowa does, because Iowa gets a much more consistent set of rainfall than we do. Our weather is much more variable, so we are riskier. And that's why insurance is more expensive out here, because it is riskier. So on average, you would expect to see a little more payout in the plain states than you would in the others. But last year and this year are anomalies for the last 10 years because it's very high payouts. And I would expect this year to be a very high payout year for places like Nebraska and Iowa.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.